Before this episode begins, we need to mention the passing of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Unfortunately, due to scheduling conflicts, much of this week's episode was pre-recorded, so we will not be able to speak at length about this accomplished woman. So, for now, know that our hearts go out to her family and friends, and all who were affected and inspired by her remarkable life. Also, we intend to cover her life and accomplishments in full in a future episode of the show. Thank you, and so begins our show. I do hope that the changes we've made over this past week have been helpful for everyone.
The cookies in the break room are the best part of my day, Mr. McNally.
Yes, very good, Archie. But perhaps we can discuss how you all found it acceptable to record me without my knowledge.
It was entertaining, Jonathan, and it was good for the peace.
My privacy is not to be trespassed upon for your entertainment, Bruce.
But think of the audience.
What audience?
There.
I'm working on it, fellas.
Of course you are.
Apologies for interjecting, Mr. McNally, but we should all remember that the average American is recorded on CCTV around 75 times per day.
Well, that is deeply disturbing, but I say if anyone in this office chooses to record me again without my knowledge, there will be retribution. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must report the news.
So, who is going to tell him? Let's just see how it plays out, I'd say.
Very well, no introduction this week. That's perfectly fine. Hello, my name is Jonathan T. McNally, and you are listening to yesterday's news today. This week, we will be covering the wildfires that have devastated large swaths of the nation. I am aware that we have covered these already on the show, but as they continue to devastate, we thought it would be best to cover them in more detail. More than 50 fires have ravaged the west coast of the United States, raising about 5 million acres in California, Oregon, and Washington state. Oregon Department of Forestry spokesman Jim Gersbach said that the state has seen more fires burning in the past week than have occurred during the entire last century. This widespread disaster has so far claimed the lives of 36 people, with many more unaccounted for. Oregon is preparing for a mass fatality incident as they begin to search for countless individuals who are still missing. The impact is also worsening the ongoing coronavirus crisis. Thousands of individuals have been displaced from their homes and are seeking shelter. This is making transmission easier and protection more difficult. Not only will this mingle infected individuals with those previously unexposed, but many are sheltering in enclosed buildings, including especially crowded shelters. Many testing facilities have also been forced to shut down due to safety concerns from encroaching fires. Dr. Peter Chin Hong, an infectious disease specialist at the University of California, says that there is increased risk as smoke inhalation damages the lining of the throat, making it easier for the virus to land and infect. On top of this, there is a 9% increase in the mortality rate from COVID-19 when compounded with poor air quality. The air quality in the region has been especially poor, with several cities in the western U.S. recorded as the most polluted in the world for several days this past week. This was visibly documented with striking images and video of nearly otherworldly orange skies. The strange effect was caused by smoke and particulate rising from the massive blazes into the atmosphere, and the effects spread throughout the U.S. and parts of Canada, with foul air reportedly reaching as far as Washington, D.C. A state of emergency has been declared across the region as crews struggle to fight the blazes. In California alone, over 8 million gallons of water and 4.6 million gallons of fire retardant have been used. State governors are now looking for federal help as resources are stretched thin. The President has made an emergency declaration allowing for FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to provide additional aid. We had previously reported on the incarcerated fire crews that are a crucial part of California's firefighting apparatus. But these prisoners are often ineligible for jobs as firefighters when released. This all changed with a bill signed by Governor Gavin Newsom this past week. AB 2147 will allow formerly incarcerated individuals who have completed the prison firefighting program to try to expunge their records and become professional firefighters. This is a historic change, but one the governor found important for, quote, inmates who have stood on the front line battling historic fires. When President Donald J. Trump visited the West Coast early this week, a disagreement arose about the causes of these widespread infernos. While the governors of the states affected have been vocal about the need for policies regarding climate change to combat future fires, the president countered this during a roundtable in McClellan Park, California. He said, "It'll start getting cooler, just you watch." When questioned on the scientific basis for this statement, the president said, "Okay, well, I don't think science knows, actually." He has gone on instead to insist on the need for better forest management to stop future fires. This is certainly a factor, as fires are indeed worsened by an abundance of small trees and brush that act as kindling. But with millions spent on tree thinning and brush clearing in western states every year, the resources to do more are simply not there. This is clearly not the only factor, as many fires are going through grasslands, and some of the largest fires this year have been on federal lands. Meteorologists have pointed to the weather phenomena that have exacerbated this historic year of fires. The most recent blazes were worsened by extreme cold that hit the Rocky Mountains on Labor Day, and extremely high temperatures on the West Coast. According to Rebecca Mwessel, meteorologist at the National Weather Service in Portland, this created high-pressure systems in the east and low pressure in the west, resulting in extremely high winds. These conditions were ideal for spreading the already burning fires. They had ample fuel to continue the spread with the dry, dead brush and trees caused by droughts throughout the region this summer.
Droughts caused by climate change.
Meanwhile, other parts of the country are facing the effects of Hurricane Sally. On Wednesday morning, the Category 2 storm made landfall, causing massive flooding along the Florida-Alabama border. Officials say the storm released a deluge of 4 months of rain in just 4 hours. Hundreds of people were rescued from the floods, and so far 2 deaths have been reported. Many homes were destroyed, and as of this recording, hundreds of thousands are still without power. This last Monday, Sally was among a historic 7 tropical systems all brewing in the Atlantic. This is only the second time on record that more than 5 tropical cyclones have been forming in the Atlantic simultaneously. Due to this record-breaking season, the National Hurricane Center has run out of letters to name storms, and is thus moving on to the Greek alphabet. Tropical Storm Beta is slowly building up strength in the Gulf of Mexico. Forecasters warn that the storm will likely bring flash flooding from the Texas coast through southern Louisiana, when it makes landfall later this week.
This is all clearly due to climate change.
Bruce, it sounds like you have something to say.
Oh, no, nothing, Jonathan. Carry on.
Maybe you can tone it down a tad, then.
I'm just concerned that you're missing the point again. But I don't want to repeat it the other week, so...
Missing the point. I am, as always, reporting the facts.
There's more facts to be had.
Bruce, I respect you as a newsman and would like to be afforded the same. If you think you can do a better job than myself at reporting the news, be my guest. The mic is yours.
Wait, where are you going?
Have a good show, Bruce.
I just wanted to cover this one story. Jonathan, wait, this isn't what I wanted.
It is what it is.
Well then, the environment. Fires, hurricanes. Where were we?
Actually, it's about time for our ad break.
Of course it is. A word from our sponsors. Go for it, Denberg.
I don't have anything.
And why not?
Well, everyone always pokes fun at me for not having any real sponsors, so I didn't prepare anything this week.
All right, then. Now what?
I'm not sure, sir.
Here you go, and read this.
Whatever you say, sir. Do images of apocalyptic skies make you nervous? Does the current state of the United States have you feeling down? Are you worried about the lack of worry about the impending climate crisis that will likely restructure the whole of human society? Well, you can do your small part to help. You can buy energy-efficient light bulbs and turn off lights and appliances when you leave a room. You might buy foods locally and eat more vegetables instead of meat. Your body will be happy that you did. Consider not littering. That should be the bare minimum requirement to be a civilized human being. Really, how are people still littering in the year 2020? And reduce, reuse, and recycle. If we all do these small things each and every day, we may help the world as we know it last just a short while longer.
Well, actually, while doing things individually is important, most of the environmental issues are systemic and the result of ongoing neglect by large corporations and governments. PSAs like that are mostly propaganda to shift the blame on the consumer. So, could we get back to climate change now, Denberg?
Well, Bruce, usually we do strangely true local news at this point. Listeners love it.
Strangely true? What?
Don't you listen to our show?
No. Why would I?
Here you are.
Our first local story is interesting news for anyone who might have a spare $8 million lying around. At Christie's in New York, one of the most well-preserved T-Rex skeletons has gone on sale. This fossilized creature is 37 feet long and named Stan. Why are we reporting on this?
The people love it.
The people are idiots. Who decides on these?
Well, I do, sir.
Of course you do. All right, here's another one then, dear audience. Apparently, reports of a tiger roaming the area of Knoxville, Tennessee were a case of mistaken identity. Wildlife officials believe it was just a bobcat. And reports of a dolphin stranded in shallow waters in Britain was just a really big tuna. Wow. So glad we did that. I cannot believe Jonathan allows some of this on his purest news show.
Maybe he understands the needs of a news show more than you give him credit for.
Maybe. Now can I get back to the real news, please?
I don't see why not.
Fantastic. All right. Returning to the rampant fires raging in the west and storms battering the southeast, many have humorously chalked these up to the strange and often calamitous year that is 2020. While this may currently seem like one for the books, scientists and climatologists warn that this is only the beginning. They depict a future where we may all one day look back at 2020 with fondness, remembering better days. Jeff Schlegelmich, director of the National Center for Disaster Preparedness at Columbia University, says, "These are all things we should expect to see more and more of as climate change takes a deeper hold. Drought, wildfires, and heat waves are expected to be worsened both in intensity and in longevity. This forecast is concerning when the current climate in the United States is examined. Fires in the state of California have increased 5-fold since 1972, with most of the worst fires occurring within the last decade. There are many influencing factors, but almost all can be attributed to mankind. While intense lightning storms caused much destruction earlier this summer, 97% of fires are caused by people. Whether lit by sparks from equipment, or from arson and debris burning, or even apparently pyrotechnic devices at gender reveal parties which burn 13,000 acres. Additionally, people have introduced invasive grasses that are more flammable. Another issue is simply the fact that fires keep getting put out. Prescribed burns were once much more common, but as people have settled into more remote areas, these have become much more difficult to implement. This has resulted in overgrowth of trees and shrubbery that makes for kindling when fires are sparked. This is then compounded by these plants dying from climate change. According to Columbia University scientist A. Park Williams, trying to manage California's wildfires is like trying to hold back a tidal wave. Climate change is also attributed to changes in the nature of the jet stream, a band of air currents that encircles the globe. These changes have resulted in daily weather moving less and fewer rains reaching the region. Snows melt earlier each year, making for drier plants in summer, and the rains come later, making fire season longer. Similar changes are also determined to cause worse hurricanes as are being seen around the Gulf each year. According to a study in the Journal of Climate by the American Meteorological Society, Category 5 storms are projected to rise by 85% globally, and even more so in the Atlantic. Warmer water temperatures give more heat energy to storms, making them much more intense. Due to slower currents, storms also move slower, which may not sound like a bad thing, but actually means they have much more time to gather water and more time to deposit that as rain. A prime example of this was 2017's Hurricane Harvey that caused $125 billion of damage, largely from massive flooding in Houston and southeast Texas. Hurricanes with that amount of heavy rainfall were considered a once-in-a-century event. According to the previously mentioned study, over the next century these storms are projected to occur once every 5.5 years. And while these examples may be first on the minds of many Americans, massive weather events are quite widespread. Last week, Typhoon Haishen lashed Japan and the Korean Peninsula. Iowa is still recovering from its damaging derecho. Phoenix, Arizona has endured 53 days of 110-degree heat, 20 days longer than anything previously on record. Los Angeles County just had its hottest recorded temperature last weekend at 121 degrees Fahrenheit. The World Meteorological Organization has shown that 2016 to 2020 is set to be the warmest 5-year period on record. And fires in the Amazon rainforest have been at exceptionally high levels for a second consecutive year. This is of course concerning, as the forest has long been regarded as the lungs of the planet, influencing global temperatures and rainfall and absorbing carbon dioxide. Experts warn that damage to the region could be reaching a point of no return. Carlos Nobra, a leading climate science researcher at the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil, warns that as large portions of the rainforest die, it will eventually be unable to produce enough rain to sustain itself. According to data from the National Institute for Space Research, the tipping point is between 20 and 25% of deforestation. The Amazon rainforest currently sits at 17%. Also of note, a heat wave devastated Siberia earlier this year. This led to increased shrinking ice sheets and declining glaciers, but the effects can also be seen in massive wildfires in the Arctic Circle. These blazes make up the worst fire season recorded and have released over 244 million metric tons of CO2, only adding to the problem. And all these natural disasters are only a part of the future climate change has in store for us. In a study by Dr. Anthony Fauci and medical historian Dr. David Morans, both from the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, they say that we are entering a pandemic era due to modern human behavior and deforestation. The latter is forcing animals to migrate from warmer climates and encounter new creatures, making for new pathogen hosts. The increased temperature also makes for increases to diseases like malaria, Zika, West Nile, and dengue fever spread by mosquitoes, as well as tick and waterborne diseases. Jeff Masters, meteorologist for Yale Climate Connections, goes on to say that a warming planet forces individuals into enclosed air-conditioned settings where the spreading of pathogens is also more likely. Finally, meteorologist Michael Mann of Penn State University says that climate change can be a threat multiplier. He cites Puerto Rico, where many have died of COVID-19, because public health infrastructure has still not fully recovered from Hurricane Maria 3 years ago. More current examples can be seen in Jonathan's report on the fires, where testing facilities have been reduced for safety, and individuals are crowded indoors at evacuation centers. Florida also saw COVID spikes traced back to those sheltering indoors from heat. Further effects of climate change involve food shortages and loss of access to water. According to a report by ProPublica, more than 2.6 billion people worldwide already face some sort of water stress, meaning that demand for water has exceeded that which is available or safe to use. By 2040, this number is expected to rise to 5.4 billion. As resources decline, people will need to move to survive. In 2019, 5 million people were displaced by natural disasters in India alone, and that number rises to 25 million globally. The Sydney-based Institute for Economics and Peace predicted in their Ecological Threat Register that more than 1 billion people will be displaced in the next 30 years by ecological disasters and increased conflict that will result. These issues will lead to massive migrations as climate refugees seek out better resource countries. But such migrations will not be exclusive to developing and poorer countries. According to the ProPublica report, based on where individuals currently reside, essentially half of Americans are expected to see significant declines in their environment, with 4 million projected to be living at the fringe of what is ideal for human life by the year 2070. This is due to rising temperatures and natural disasters, but also sea levels rising, particularly in cities like Miami and New Orleans. Miami has already accepted that certain roads are unaffordable to maintain with sea rise, and New Orleans has lost 1,900 square miles of land over the past 70 years. Meanwhile, in Alaska, homes along the shoreline are falling into the sea as permafrost melts and erosion increases. With all of this, what can we do? How can we possibly hope to combat such an overwhelming global catastrophe? To tell you the truth, I'm not entirely sure. This is something that humanity should have tackled decades ago, but as conditions have worsened, we have failed to do enough to rein in pollution and our usage of fossil fuels. This is especially baffling in the United States. There was a time when Americans regarded climate change as fact, but over the past few decades, the issue has been politicized. There is documentation going back to the 80s wherein oil companies have known about the issues on the horizon, but ran disinformation campaigns to sow public distrust in the notion. Further lobbying has led politicians to roll back regulations on industries, and in 2017 the United States withdrew from the Paris Agreement, which was a bastion of hope toward curbing the rate at which global warming increased. With that being said, many countries and industries are indeed working to reduce emissions and halt their negative impact on the environment. But is this enough? The answer is honestly probably not. This is because we are already there, feeling the beginning effects of climate change. Now all we can do is hope to reduce these effects as much as possible. This will require a massive, rapid change in how energy is used and distributed, decarbonizing and replacing the very machines that comprise every aspect of our everyday lives. As in our little public service announcement, you can do your small part by recycling, conserving, and not littering. But this is unfortunately only a very tiny drop in a very large bucket, because most of the problem isn't you or me. 71% of global emissions since 1988 have come from just 100 companies. They must be held accountable. They must fix the damage that they have done. It will require vast political regulation, adjustments to international infrastructure, and have widespread economic repercussions. And that kind of massive change will affect everyone's lives. That can be truly terrifying to think of, but it is better than the looming alternative that I've described. This is an issue that must be undertaken by more than just individuals or even nations, but by humanity as a whole. We must view this as a threat to our very species, as all of us will, one day, feel the effects. Many activists may cry that we need to stop destroying the planet, but that's not actually the case. The Earth will live on with or without us. So this isn't about saving the world. It's about saving ourselves. And back to you, Jonathan. Oh, right. Well, I'm not sure how the man talks this much. That was exhausting. Denberg, is there anything else that we need to do?
What? Oh, you finally finished. Where were we? Well, Archie had something to add with. Conspiracy Corner with Archie, the debunker.
A rumor was spread on the World Wide Web about 6 Antifa members setting fires in Oregon. This gained more traction when the anonymous Q promoted this information via 8kun. Both the FBI and the Douglas County Sheriff have said this is untrue, and urged citizens to only trust and share information by official sources.
Thank you for that riveting report. Is that all?
Is that... I nearly forgot. There's reports that some people ignored evacuation orders because they feared Antifa would loot their property.
That's truly terrible, but I was speaking to Denberg. Are we done yet?
We did skip a few other stories earlier that Jonathan wanted to cover, but I'm not sure that we have time since...
Let me see what we have here. President hosts Israel, UAE, Bahrain at White House signing ceremony. Woodward book says Trump downplayed coronavirus, but he says he upplayed it. Oregon state senator who blocked climate change vote loses home to wildfires. Wow. Should have put that in my story. Trump calls for patriotic education, calls anti-racism teachings child abuse. And whistleblower says that Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, ICE, facility is performing mass hysterectomies on detained people. Multiple women have come forward claiming the procedure was performed on them unnecessarily. Wait, there's got to be more information about this.
We don't have time to go into it more this week, Bruce. I'm sorry. We'll have to wait until next week.
But we have to. This doesn't sound much different than the Uyghurs and...
Bruce, we really have to wrap up the show. Perhaps that's why Jonathan wanted to spend a bit less time on the impending climatological apocalypse and a bit more on national stories.
But both are important.
And that's the kind of decision he has to make each and every week.
I guess I didn't realize.
All right, this clearly isn't working out.
And who are you supposed to be?
I'm your boss.
I thought Jonathan was our boss.
No, he's just a newsman. I'm your producer.
I thought Denberg was the producer.
I thought I was an intern.
An unpaid intern.
Wait, we're getting paid?
Of course not. But maybe we could be if we could get the show working the way it needs to.
And what exactly is wrong with it?
Well, your lead newsman walked out, and the past 10 minutes have been truly excruciating.
That's fair.
It wasn't that bad, was it?
It was, and when Jonathan returns, we are all going to sit down and figure this out, once and for all.
To clarify, are you the one who is supposed to be finding our sponsors?
Of course I am.
Then why have I...
Because it's been entertaining to watch you try. And entertainment is the name of the game. This is no longer just a news show. If you want an audience, you want sponsors, you want to get paid, you're going to have to show some leg.
I can assure you that you don't want that.
It's a figure of speech. We're going to have to find a more provocative way to tell the news of today, or this show will be yesterday's news. Now, Denberg, let's end this. Please, play the outro.
Why, yes, whatever you say, ma'am.
Don't call me ma'am.
Oh, sorry, ma'am. What should we call you?
Scarlett. Scarlett Murdoch. Now, about that outro.
This program was written and performed by Roger J. Thacher and Dennis Shanaberg, with a special appearance by Caitlin Wolfe as Scarlett Murdoch. You are encouraged to obtain a subscription to this broadcast with the simple selection of a button below. Furthermore, you can indicate your appreciation by giving us the old thumbs up. Did you have any thoughts about any of our stories? Please comment them below. Or to read those of our newsmen, tune your Twitter to @RadioYNT. And as always, be sure to tune in next week to hear tomorrow's news of yesterday. Then,